Corruption, I'm going to label it our #1 public enemy. Because in my view, it is the root of all the evil that exists in our country. If you didn't have corruption, you would have clean elections. You would have a stable economy. You would have a stable political system. We don't have all of this because of corruption. That's my view. We have come to a stage where corruption is so rampant, it's endemic, as someone said earlier. We have come to a point where we wonder whether there is, in fact, anything we can do about it at all. I would say, don't give up. In 1974, Hong Kong faced exactly this problem. Hong Kong was probably then one of the most corrupt cities in the world. They say so themselves. Corruption had become a way of life. Then they set up this commission called the ICAC, Anti-Corruption Commission of Hong Kong. Within 3 years, the corruption syndicates in the government were dismantled. 247 government officials, including 143 police officers, were prosecuted. Hong Kong is a success story. 35 years later, they continue to be a success story. What was wonderful was when their ministers and their chief justice and all these people who gave their talks, I went to the Hong Kong opening of the legal year, when they gave their talks, they could look you in the eye and say, Hong Kong is corruption-free. You can invest with us safely. They could sell that to the public. And I was a little bit envious. Now in Hong Kong, they came to a point where corruption was so bad, they decided something had to be done. So they set up this commission. But their commission was completely independent. They reported to a completely independent body. And then the report of that commission is put before Parliament. We have set up MACC, by the way, which is apparently a new body, different from what was there before, but actually it isn't. It's a little bit like old wine in new bottles, yes. Old wine in new bottles. A few changes, yes. We actually have an advisory body, and Tan Sri is on it, Tan Sri Raymond Navaratnam is on that. We also have special committees, advisory committees, and so on. Now, the disappointment in that is, when I first heard there were going to be amendments to the Act, and that there was going to be oversight bodies, I was very impressed. And I thought, wow, the government is really serious about corruption. Then I realized that these advisory committees are operating under very difficult circumstances. They are just merely advisory. They have no access to Parliament. Their views have no access to Parliament. They report, another committee reports to the Prime Minister, so the Prime Minister is there. And what goes to Parliament is a very filtered document. And in fact, as I understand it, there's no stipulation that reports have to go before Parliament every year, as there is in Hong Kong. So we are so scared of having independent oversight over the Commission. Why? If you think your Commission is doing a good job, you shouldn't be afraid. There should be no fear. More importantly, if you are genuine about fighting corruption, you will insist that the MACC is independent. You will insist that they report to an independent oversight committee, and you will insist that it goes to Parliament. So what does this show you? When I read the reports about the ISCC, one of the fundamental things is that there must be political will to wipe out corruption. That will get you to the first base. There are other bases. You need strong legislation. You need funding. But you can't even get to first base if you don't have the political will to deal with corruption. And I'm going to say this without fear or favor. As I say, I'm a thorn in the side, and I'm going to say it. We do not have, this government does not have the political will to fight corruption. Because of the way the changes were brought to the MACC. Now let me read you a World Bank report, very interesting, 2004 report. The World Bank report says, this minimum may be nothing more than the establishment of an anti-corruption commission, an office of the Ombudsman, anti-fraud unit without enabling legislation, competent staff or a budget. Having created offices to which they may point and situating them in the presidency, policy makers may return to business as usual. In the worst cases, the commissions, this is important, become tools to repress political rivals, and members of the opposition or previous governments become targets of investigation. The impact is to undermine political legitimacy further. Sounds familiar? Sounds familiar, sounds ever so familiar. What has the MACC been very busy doing in the last 1 year? Very busy. Very busy going after the opposition over cows and ridiculous things like that. They have gone after the speaker, the former speaker in the Perak crisis. They have gone after the politicians in Perak. There's a whole list more. Of course, they've also said, very recently they said, the private investigator Bala, oh yes, he's made a lot of allegations, but if they want us to investigate, we want a formal report. Since when? Since when? And have you noticed that every time they want to either intimidate or they don't want to investigate, they say, this is police as well as MACC, they say, no police report, we cannot do anything. That's not true. The minute they perceive a crime or an offense, they must act. So the way this institution has been carrying on, and I'm not talking about all the officers in MACC, please don't get me wrong. There are many good people there who don't like what is happening. But unfortunately, the people who call the shots, make it look as if MACC is an appendage of the government. They are there only to serve the government. And that's not the only institution that behaves in that fashion. Now, they are actually supposed to be independent enough to investigate the government, even the Prime Minister if necessary. Anyone in government should be open to investigation by the MACC. Do we see that happening? Not at all, and you won't. This is why I say there is a complete lack of political will to fight corruption in this country. It's too deep-set, deep-rooted. Even if leaders may want to fight corruption, there's an issue because there's so many others who are so involved in corruption that it's difficult to bring about change. Now, I would like to say that, oh yes, the other actually incident that I want to mention is this police report against the doctor who's supposed to give evidence in the Teo Beng Hawk trial. Now, I know the matter is going on, and I won't say too much, but what does that show you? You see? And every time they bring in the big guns, or they try and use the system to protect themselves. Now, this is MACC trying to protect itself. Every time they use the system to protect itself, it loses more credibility. I honestly think that we have come to a stage where if some of these people in MACC said today was a Saturday, Malaysians won't believe them. Their credibility is shot to pieces.
Dr. Ambiga, 1 more minute.